Approaches to language learning. Today we are going to be discussing crashing, the natural approach, total physical response, and community language learning.
Stephen Krashen was born in Chicago in 1941. He has a PhD in linguistics that he received from the University of California of Los Angeles in 1972 on his dissertation of language and the left hemisphere. He joined the USC School of Education in 1941. He is the author of more than 250 articles and books in the fields of bilingual education, neurolinguistics, second language acquisition, and literacy. He's received numerous awards for his publications. Stephen Krashen introduced various hypotheses related to second language acquisition. Krashen's language acquisition theory begins with the acquisition learning hypothesis. The acquisition learning hypothesis has two main parts to it: acquisition and learning. Acquisition is learned from listening and understanding, so students can make connections between their target language and their native language. When students can make these connections, they can begin to have meaningful conversations. Krashen's next hypothesis is the motor hypothesis, which is based off of spontaneous acquisition through communication. Again, students use what they already know to help them communicate. The natural order hypothesis says how students pick up their native language is how they'll pick up their target language. Acquisition happens in predictable sequences. There's a natural order in learning. The comprehensible input hypothesis says that acquisition happens when students are exposed to language that is slightly higher than what they already know. Lastly, affective filter hypothesis talks about students' emotions and attitudes, how they can filter out input that students need for acquisition. Students need to be confident in themselves, have to be motivated, and have to have low anxiety environment to result in best acquisition. The natural approach was developed under Stephen Krashen in 1983. It is based off his language acquisition theory. He believes talking is not practice, and that students will not learn just by rewriting what they see or mimicking the target language. Students need visual aids such as pictures, gestures, motions, and different activities that help them connect the target language to their native language. This not only helps them comprehend, but it also allows for comprehensionable input. There needs to be a lot of comprehensible input. Students' native language is not spoken. It is only used to make connections. The natural approach is not based on grammar, but it is involved heavily with vocabulary so students can make connections when communicating. Listening and reading needs to be the main focus in the classroom. Krashen says that when students start to speak and listen, it is not the beginning of acquisition. Acquisition begins with listening. Speaking happens once the connections are made in their heads. Classrooms should be a relaxed environment with little to no stress. Students' work should be centered not on grammar, but on meaningful conversation.
Total physical response was created by James Asher. TPR is a method used in the attempt to teach language through physical activity. Asher believes that children learn through commands which they then respond to physically before they produce verbal responses. TPR can be traced as trace theory as well. It is believed that more often or the more intensively a memory connection is traced, the stronger the memory association will be, and the more likely it will be recalled. For example, if a student were to sing a song, they would learn it better if they added movement while singing. I chose TPR as an approach because I truly believe creating a stronger connection through physical activities can help students retain what they are being taught. I believe that TPR is an important approach to teach because students do learn best when it involves them moving around. We have universal symbols for certain things such as time, being hungry or tired that does not involve using verbal response, yet many of us know what they represent. By having commands, it allows students to not only create a connection through movement, but also allows them to interact with one another. I will use TPR in my classroom as much as possible by creating physical activities. These activities in turn will help students recall what they have learned and create for an easier task. Students who are EDBL will make better connections by feeling, seeing, or hearing compared to just doing a worksheet that may have no visual representations, which can make it harder for them to understand.
Community language learning. Community language learning was developed by Charles Curran. Curran developed this approach using a counseling learning theory. From this theory, the roles of a traditional learning environment are redefined. In community language learning, the teacher becomes the counselor and the learners become the clients. Community language learning also practices humanistic thinking. This means that the whole person is engaged and all the emotions, feelings, knowledge, and skills are engaged in the learning. One of the main tasks in community language learning is to apprehend the sound system, assign fundamental meanings, and to construct a basic grammar of the foreign language. In order for community language to work, the students must become a community. As learners form relationships through interaction in the target language, everyone will feel the need to better themselves and keep up with their peers. Some ways to incorporate community language learning into your classrooms are group work. Group work can include small group discussions, presentations, conversations, and storytelling. Transcriptions. Students transcribe conversations for practice. Analysis. Here, students study transcriptions of target language sentences and focus on a specific application of particular grammar rules. Reflection. The learners will reflect on their learning experiences. This includes how they felt about a certain lesson, what they like or don't like about the class, and concerns. Reflection will also help to understand one another better. And free conversation. In conclusion, community language learning is a very unique approach. Remember that in this approach, language learning is not an individual accomplishment, but is achieved as a class collaboratively. The learners support each other, and the teacher role is to support all the students and to help everyone become a better language learner.